O'Reilly. You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people. O'Reilly Auto Parts.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 10. Today we're talking about trail cameras and everything you need to know to get the most out of them leading up to the hunting season. This should be an information-packed episode, so kick back, relax, and enjoy. All right, well, I am fresh off of a very nice, long, and sunburnt Memorial Day weekend, and joining me is my counterpart and co-host, Dan Johnson, out in Iowa. How was your weekend, bud?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. I ate a lot of grilled meat. I drank a lot of beer. I did some deer hunting stuff. I went fishing. I got to spend time with friends and family. So I crammed as much to-do type of things into 3 days as humanly possible.
Man, that sounds about as good of a weekend as you can get.
Yeah, I was happy with it. How about you?
That's awesome. I had a good weekend too. Like I said, got a lot of sun. We spent a couple nights at the campground doing some canoeing and some chilling out, eating some burgers and brats, and had a cookout at a friend's house, and then did a bunch of yard work and a little bit of deer related prep as well. So got some stuff done, which is always a good feeling, so I can't complain at all.
I bet in 3 days I ate 25 bratwurst.
Now, are you being serious? Literally?
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and yesterday. I'm not joking. I bet you I ate close to 25 bratwurst.
I don't even know how to respond to that. That's just ridiculously impressive.
Like meat sweats, like I remember it was like Friday night. I was hungry for some reason because I didn't eat a lot that day because I was trying to get out of work. And I just remember sitting there going, next bun, loaded up, next bun, sauerkraut, mustard. And it was just like one went down, then another one, then another one. So yeah, I was happy with my performance.
That's pretty impressive. This is going to be perfect for the episode we're going to do later this year where we talk about being healthy and working out and stuff and how that can help you as a hunter. This is a great example.
I was protein loading for the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's funny. I can't claim to have eaten anything that much recently, but like you did, I drank a few ice cold beverages, so if that counts for anything. That's good stuff. Well, I'm glad you have a good weekend, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about the deer stuff that we did this weekend. So we'll dive into that in just a second. But I had one more serious question I wanted to ask you before we got into the meat and potatoes here.
All right, shoot.
And speaking of potatoes, here's what I got for you. Dan, if I don't even know if I can say this without losing a straight face. If you were a potato, would you rather be a baked potato, a mashed potato, fried potatoes, or scalloped? Give it to me straight here.
If I followed in my father's footsteps, I would be scalloped potatoes.
Do explain.
But I'm not my father, okay?
Oh.
I'm going to have to go with fried potatoes. Like, you slice them and then you fry them up. Because, in my opinion, there's nothing better than a good steak or deer loin with some fried potatoes and a little hot sauce.
Yes.
I love that.
That is good stuff.
So that's my answer. Now I'm curious, A, what brought this on, and B, what's your answer?
Well, the answer to part A isn't really good. I have no idea. But
Time
literally,
filler. We don't have a lot to talk about today.
not much to talk about. No, literally, I'm kind of strange, I guess. I was driving down the road, and for some reason, I started thinking about potatoes. And I was like, man, if you were a potato, and then I got to think, hey, that'd be a good question to ask Dan. So here I am.
I hope I gave a good answer.
I thought it was pretty good. It's better than what I've got.
Okay.
I think I'd be a fried potato as well.
Okay.
But what I started thinking is I'd be a fried potato because I love the sun and love getting a good sunburn. So I was thinking I'd get fried in the sun. So that's the best I got. I was kind of expecting you to make a joke about being a baked potato, but
I don't have any potato jokes.
no potato jokes. Nothing about being baked.
No. Well, maybe in college.
But that's neither here nor there, right?
Exactly.
Oh, geez. Okay. So
we better talk about trail cameras before you start losing sponsors.
yeah, enough about potatoes and all that good stuff. We really wanted to talk about trail cameras today. And like I mentioned, we both did some trail camera related work this past weekend. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about what you were doing, Dan, in a second. But I thought I'd kick things off here by starting with a story about what happened to me this weekend. And it's actually kind of tragic. So if you'll indulge me, I'm going to share a sad story.
I'm all ears.
All right, so about a little over a week ago, maybe 10 days, I put out my first trail cameras on some of my Michigan properties. Put out some mineral, got the cameras out there, and I figured I'd wait about a week to 10 days before going in there and changing them out. And at this point, I'm not expecting to see a whole lot, but there's still that chance of seeing the beginnings of some antler growth. And there's one buck in particular on one of these properties that I've been hunting for 3 years. Some of you might know this buck. I've been calling him Leaner, and I'm just dying to know if he made it through the winter. The last I saw him was December 10th, and I've got no sign of him since. But nobody around this area has killed him that I know of. Haven't found him dead. I shed hunted and walked all the properties for like a 500-acre area around here. No sign of him. So I'm really hopeful he's still around. But the whole point of me mentioning that is that I'm just praying to get a picture of him. He's got a big old scar and a blind eye, so I'll know it's him, even if there's not much antler growth. And he seems to, the past 2 years, he's disappeared in December, and he shows back up in the very early summer. So my hope is he's out there. So long story short, had those cameras out, hoping to get a picture of Leaner. Yesterday, I decided it was time to go check those cameras. And I had a bunch of other projects I wanted to do. I had to spray a couple food plots. I was hanging a bunch of no trespassing signs. And then I was going to check 2 trail cameras. So I headed back there. I pulled a couple SD cards, put up some some trespassing signs, no trespassing signs, and motored on back to the truck, to my house, came into my office, pulled out the SD cards out of my pocket, and realized there were not SD cards. There was just one SD card. Somehow, some way, along my hike and my little 4-wheeler ride, I lost one of my SD cards. And it was just like a absolutely crushing feeling, because this was the card that was in my best spot too, where I always get great pictures.
Right.
Oh, it was just devastating. You know how there's 2 things I hate the most. 1, losing a card. This has happened to me twice now. Or number 2, getting to a trail camera and finding out that it hasn't taken any pictures, or something went wrong and you've got nothing. Because I don't know about you, but checking a trail camera is like Christmas morning. I get so ridiculously excited.
Yeah, that's possibly up there with finding a big shed or actually killing a good deer that you've been after. Checking your trail camera and finding a giant on it rates right up there as far as an excitement level is concerned for me, man.
Oh yeah, it's the best. The highest of highs, and then when something like this happens, it's the lowest of lows.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I would rather get kicked in the junk than actually come to find out that, user error, I messed up on a trail camera, or it didn't take pictures, or I lost an SD card on the walk back. And I'm not joking. There's sometimes I'm so anal retentive about these things that I keep the SD card in my mouth while I walk back to my truck, and then I put it into my ashtray of my truck, and that's where I keep them.
Yeah.
Until I get home.
I'm similar. Usually I put them in a zip up pocket, but this time it was just in my regular front pocket. And the only thing that could be worse is what happened to me like 3 years ago. I pulled a card, and it was during the rut. It was a card for the first 2 weeks of November. Like, that would be definitely the best camera pull probably all year, showing me, all sorts of good deer moving through the area, and lost the dang thing. Who knows what was on there? So, but that's how it goes. So that was my my trail camera excitement for the weekend. I checked the one card, and just a handful of does, nothing exciting. So it's still early. The beans are just starting to pop out of the ground now. So I think on this property where those cameras are, we should start getting some good deer activity here soon, and those cameras will start lighting up. But I don't know. That's the story for me. What about you? What were you up to?
Well, let's see. 4 weeks ago is when I actually put out my mineral stations. And so this weekend, I went up and hung my trail cameras over top of those mineral stations. And the reason I waited a couple weeks is because A, to prevent me from going in there, and B, because really, unless a deer has a noticeable, like a cut in his ear or a double throat patch or something that you could tell who he is, right now you can't tell them apart, in my opinion. But so I went out and I hung all my trail cameras up. Well, not all of them. I forgot one of my cable, like my tree cables. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4 trail camera. 4 out of my 8 hung up. I come to find out something's wrong with 3 of them, and so I'm going to have to do some research to find out what's wrong with them. It's not recording pictures to the SD card. So I'm going to have to call the manufacturer and find out what's going on, and hopefully it's just a quick reset fix. And other than that, did some scouting, found an awesome pinch point that I can't wait to get in and dive into. I'm actually going to write a blog about this specific pinch point in the next couple weeks. And
nice.
So yeah, then the next step is hanging a couple tree stands in this little area and watch, get an observation stand up, and when the season does come around, watch the movement and then make a move accordingly.
Man, sounds like a pretty good plan.
Yep.
That's funny. You mentioned the fact that you had 3 cameras go dead on you too. We're both having some pretty bad luck on the camera side of things, I guess, so far.
Yeah, I mean, they work just fine, but it's just that they're not catching the pic. They're not transferring the image to the SD card. So, yeah, who knows what's going on. And I've had some friends who have had some same issues with some of these cameras in the past. And, otherwise, these cameras work awesome. It's just that now all of a sudden, and last year they worked just fine, so I don't know if I dropped them or something or what the deal is. I'll have to do a little work to find out what the deal is.
Yeah, well, wish you luck with that.
Yeah.
That's no good, missing almost half of your cameras. So that, with that being the case, I'm curious, Dan. I'd like to explore what your thoughts are on this, and then I've got a handful of ideas that I wanted to share. But since we're talking right now about trail cameras, and specifically today, I really wanted to focus on uses for trail cameras in the off season. And while there's no, we don't say there's really a technical off season since we're doing stuff all year round. But outside of the actual hunting season, how do we use trail cameras? And what I wanted to ask you was, what are your goals or uses for these cameras during this couple month period of time before the season?
Well, I get them out right about now, and because the antler growth really isn't, anything to really care about right now. I mean, it's fun to see them, but right now I kind of want to see how many fawns the does had, and if they're, sometimes the does won't visit these mineral sites this early with their fawns, but sometimes they do, and I'd like to get an idea of how many does were actually bred and how many had fawns. Just kind of because I know in some of my properties they just get hammered shotgun season, and the population's probably cut down between 25 to 50% every year. Wow. A lot of those young bucks and young does being killed. So it's always good to kind of get an idea of what the next crop coming in is. I guess that's one of the reasons.
Okay, nice. And then as we get farther into the summer, once there's some more antler growth, what are you looking for then? Are you just
purely return shooters? Just like we study these trail camera pictures long enough, and that would be specifically putting together a hit list and what deer made it, what deer returned, deer that you hope you see, deer that are like a 3-year-old, 4-year-old that you kind of hope you never see within shooting range. It'd be nice to see them from the stand, but you don't want to have to make that decision on a big 3-year-old. Right. And kind of hope nature makes that decision for you by not having them show up, and then basically helping you find out where you start hunting, where the deer are, and if they're around those food sources come early season, where I'm going to be hunting.
Okay. All right. That seems like pretty well in line with what I'm looking for and what my goals are this time of year too. Like you said, number one, I'm looking to take inventory of what bucks are in the area. And, part of that is checking out what you mentioned, return shooters, what deer that I was hunting in the past are back this year. And then also, what new deer are moving into the ranks, in some cases where I've taken a deer or neighbors have taken a deer, new bucks, new mature bucks will move into the area. So I'm always curious to see, what those deer might be. And then also, in some cases, I'm hunting new properties. And this time of year, I really like to use these trail cameras to help give me a better idea of the overall quality or the general quality of this area. So again, if I get a couple mature bucks or a lot of mature bucks on camera, while they may not all be there come fall, it still is a good sign that this general region holds the type of deer I'm looking for that may be rolling through there come the rut. A big thing also related to this, kind of related to what I just mentioned, is the fact that a lot of deer have a different summer range and a different fall range. And usually around the time that velvet's coming off, maybe the first week in September, give or take, a lot of these bucks are relocating from that summer range to a new area. And what I've seen, and from others that I've talked to, I would guesstimate maybe around 50%, maybe 50% of bucks are relocating from a new area. So when I've got a property and I've got maybe 4 or 5 different mature bucks in the summer, I usually assume that maybe 2, maybe 3 of those bucks even might not be there in the fall. That said, it's still important to be tracking those deer because 2 or 3 of them may still be there, and then those other 2 that may be relocated, they could always roll back through during the rut. And like you said, it's nice to be able to take a look at those deer now, judge them to your best of your ability, age them, and make a decision, shoot or don't shoot. I'd much rather make that decision right now, sitting, at the computer screen and say, okay, the double forked G2 buck, for sure he's going to get a pass because he's a really great 2.5-year-old. And now, when it comes to November and this great big split G2 buck comes running by, I'm not, trying to make this decision in the heat of the moment. I already know right away, I recognize that deer. He's a 2.5-year-old. I'm letting him go. So I love being able to make those judgment calls now when you can, well, not now, but July and August, when you can make those judgment calls sooner. Make sure you're confident with your decisions then when it gets to the hunting season. And
I've had a lot of resemblance to what you just said as far as September and watching the bucks spread out. Now, of course, they're hitting at that time of year. They start to stop hitting the mineral stations.
Yep.
So unless you actually catch them on a food source or on some main trail and know they're there, once they stop hitting those mineral stations, it's kind of hard to know for a fact if they're in the area or not.
Right. That comes down to the location of where those cameras are going, which we can talk about in a little bit here. And then to one more thing you mentioned, the fact that, for those deer that do end up sticking around, getting those pictures during the summer can help you start to understand some of the bedding areas that they're frequenting, some of their favorite food sources, and of course, food sources and bedding areas will change between the summer and the fall, but in some cases they'll stay the same. And if you just kind of bank that knowledge, it will help educate your strategies come October and November. Even though in many cases they change, you'll still have one piece of the puzzle that I think is worth having and can help you make those decisions. So I really do pay attention and try to learn as much as I can from these pictures, not just say, okay, here is 6-shooter, he's on camera here. I try to think, okay, I've got 15 pictures of him right before dark in this location. I've got 20 pictures of him in this location an hour before dark, and that's helping me better understand how he's using that property, where he might be bedded, and then I can make assumptions based on that knowledge and translate that to what it means for me in October, November, etc.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
So I think the only other thing that I'm really looking to do with my cameras this time of year, and I haven't done this enough myself, I want to get more serious about it, but it's something that everyone should really consider, especially given the conditions the past couple of years with EHD and the tough winter and a lot of people struggling with declining whitetail herds, and that is doing a trail camera survey. And a trail camera survey is something that can really help you understand the population of whitetails on your property in the surrounding area. So I wanted to just briefly mention this, and I'll give you the definition of what a trail camera survey is straight from the Quality Deer Management Association's Deer Cameras book, which is a really great book on this topic for trail cameras. If you're interested in really diving deep into everything you could possibly ever want to know about the subject, I highly recommend that book. So, quoting from the book, at a basic level, a trail camera survey involves baiting a number of sites across your property, photographing deer with trail cameras at these spots for about 2 weeks, and then using a set of calculations to extrapolate population dynamics based on the deer photographed. These surveys can be conducted just after hunting season or more popularly, just before the season. So what you're doing then is baiting some cameras, getting pictures of as many different deer as you possibly can in those areas for about 10 to 14 days, and then you're going to sort and kind of organize those pictures. You're going to break it down by here's all the bucks we have, here's all the fawns we have, here's all the does we have, and then you put together this whole kind of analysis, and then with a number of different calculations, which I'll link to a couple articles in the show notes which detail exactly how to do this, or in that book I mentioned, there's a ton of information about how to properly run one of these surveys. But with a few calculations based on this sample of data that you get from those pictures, you can start understanding things as what's the estimated whitetail population, what's the buck to doe ratio, what's your age structure, your population density, a whole lot of really interesting and important information you can get from these calculations. So highly recommend looking into how to do that. And again, full instructions, we'll get you links to that so that you can give that a shot. And I think most people are, like I mentioned, are either doing it right after the season, but the majority of folks are going to do that maybe that August timeframe when you can see those fawns are clearly still fawns, but you've got that population or those fawns included in the population, and it's a great time to get an idea of, okay, how many does should I be harvesting this year? How many bucks should I be looking to take if possible? And just having a better idea of what you want to do that hunting season. So I don't know, have you ever done or looked into anything like that, Dan?
Not to that standard. I know I've kept track one year, and I don't even know, I had a little booklet where after the hunting season was over, I kept track of how many does visited my trail camera in a 24-hour period. But I think my numbers were skewed because there were the same group of does hitting the trail cameras more than one time a day. So, I don't know if that calculation counts that into the mix, but because there's snow on the ground and there's easy accessible food for these deer, they're going to go to the bait piles before they have to go digging through the snow. And they're pulling those bait piles in the wintertime are pulling in deer from, could be a long ways away that typically don't live in that area. So I'm pretty sure the survey that I took, if you want to even call it a survey, would have been skewed in the first place.
Yeah, no, I could see that being the case too, but it's interesting nonetheless. When running one of these trail camera surveys by the books, it's interesting. Research has shown that if you make these calculations with a large enough sample size, it's actually very statistically significant and accurate once it's all kind of worked out. So something to look into. And I think I probably will try doing that on a couple properties around me here just to better understand how to do that and get an idea of what exactly these populations are like and how I should be hunting. So something to consider. But moving on from that, now that we know this is how we're using our cameras during the summer and those months leading up to the hunting season, I'm curious, Dan, where do you like to place your cameras this time of year and leading up to the season?
Yeah, right now they're specifically over mineral sites, and that's just because the deer are hitting them right now. And I think we talked a little bit about this on a previous podcast, but the mineral is beneficial for the fawns, for the does and their lactation cycle, and then also produce positive impact when it comes to the growth of the antlers. Now, how this is proven, I don't know. According to the brands of mineral that I've used over the years, guaranteed bigger bucks. You know what I mean, Mark?
Yeah.
So,
of course.
But yeah, right now they're specifically over trail cameras. As the crops start to come up in July and they start, especially the bean fields where the beans start podding and the corn starts getting those soft little kernels on them that they like to eat, I'll transition probably somewhere in July to, early August, depending on, when I think they're hitting those food sources. I'll be transferring over to them, and even main trails going to these food sources. So, and it's different every year. I find it out during my scouting.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. That's pretty close to what I do as well. I'm using mineral sites and some attractants, but I'm also, right from the get-go, I'm placing these cameras and creating these mineral sites near those food sources that are going to be hot in June, July, and August. So in the cases where I've got a property with beans on it, all my cameras are pretty much somewhere near the edge, near those beans, and then I add the mineral site or the different attractants. I've used a number of different mineral products, and we'll actually talk about this a little bit later too. But then I also use some different attractants. I've used the Big and J attractants as well. That seems to pull them into the mineral site, and then the mineral site will keep them coming long after that feed and attractant or corn or whatever it might be. After that's gone, they keep hitting the minerals. So I'm usually placing, right now, all my cameras are pretty near the bean fields, and then eventually they move from hitting just the mineral right now to they're coming to the soybeans, and then they'll stop by the mineral site for a few minutes and then move on to the soybeans. But in general, that's what I'm doing, and I think it's also, not only is it where the deer are right now, but also by having these cameras out near the edge of those food sources, I'm able to get in there and check them easily without, bumping any more deer than necessary. And even though hunting season isn't, for a long time, I like to keep things as low pressure as I can. And that's just going to help me get more pictures too. The more low pressure I can put, the less pressure I can put on that trail camera sight, the better chance I've got of getting pictures of big deer. So
right. And I guess I have one of my trail cameras. It's over top of a mineral station, but it also is over top of a water hole too. Mm-hmm. So, kind of a double up there.
Yeah, that's a good one. I've done that a couple times too. Not too recently, but that's a great place for summer pictures for sure.
Right. And I just get nervous now when, you got these ponds on these farms. And some of these ponds I have they're real old, so basically they're just mud holes, frogs, mosquitoes. So I was kind of hesitant to put a trail camera there to get these deer to come up to this, but there was tons of tracks before I even got there. So they're still drinking out of it. I just feel those are EHD prone areas, and I don't know, it's for some reason kind of makes me nervous.
Yeah, especially after 2 summers ago. I think a lot of people are nervous. I got pretty lucky when it came to this is off topic, but I was pretty lucky on most of my properties. I think it was the summer of 2012 that horrible EHD outbreak hit. I didn't get affected too much, but how about you? What happened on the spots you hunt?
To be honest with you, other than those ponds, and those are closer to the road, so there's not a lot of deer activity up there anyway. But the properties that I hunt have a consistent, and you know how hot it was last year.
Oh, yeah.
Last summer, and dry. I had consistent water running through my properties the entire year. It was slow, but there was moving water, which, from my understanding, helps.
Right. Keeps those midges from reproducing in that standing water.
Right.
Yeah. I, like I said, got lucky, but I do know some friends, and kind of related to what you just said, some spots where there's big standing water, swamps or ponds. I know a couple friends that had some properties that lost 70 or 80 deer. And when there's properties with big water sources like that, it's attracting deer from around the area that are all coming there to die. Since those deer that have EHD, for whatever reason, are attracted to water sources like that. But I sure hope it's not something we need to talk about this summer, but we'll continue to track what happens summer 2014, and hopefully EHD isn't nearly as bad as it has been the past couple of years. But man, I know some people really got hammered by it, and it can do some damage, that's for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so we talked about where we're putting those cameras. Both of us, we've got our cameras over some type of mineral, maybe some kind of attractant, and we're usually near a food source or a water source or something like that. How often are you checking your cameras? For me, Dan, I'm checking them on average, about every 2 weeks. Last summer, I was really good about it, and I checked them only once a month, and I think that actually helped. In a couple spots, I got a lot of mature buck pictures, more than I do usually, and I think that's because I was being particularly careful about just leaving it alone. And on one of my spots, I even was able to access it by just walking a creek, and I just walked that creek, pop up the shore, check the camera, pop back down the creek, and I was just especially careful. Even though it was the off season, I was trying to be especially careful about that movement I was making into the property, and I think that might have helped. But probably on average, it's maybe every 10 to 14 days I'm checking this time of year just to get an idea and see what's going on. But what about you?
Well, one, like I think I've said this almost every podcast now, I live about an hour away from my hunting properties. So last year, I was forcing myself to go down every 2 weeks, and that just got kind of hard because I was finding myself at like 4 o'clock on a Sunday night driving down to where I hunt, checking cards, and then coming back. So now I upgraded my SD cards to 8 gigabytes, from 2 to 4.
Nice.
And so now I'm going to let them sit a month this year, probably 3 to 4 weeks, or anytime that I'm back in town, I'll throw it, do a check. But my goal is to do 4 weeks. So, as far as pressure is concerned, I'm not putting out a lot of pressure. And, I know that I have cards big enough to handle all the images, because I've had times where even though you have like, I don't know on my trail camera, it's called a rewrite. So once a card's full, it starts rewriting over the oldest ones.
Right.
And mine was doing that, but you kind of miss the whole growth cycle, or you could miss something. And I don't like that. So I just got bigger SD cards.
Yeah, that's the way to go for sure. You don't want to, I mean, it's nice that they'll rewrite and they'll keep taking pictures, because I guess the one thing worse would be,
no pictures at all.
Exactly. Or the last 2 weeks, no pictures. So at least you get the most recent pictures. But yeah, I can definitely see that be nice. When it comes to checking my cameras, like we've talked about, I try to keep as minimal as possible, but man, when at least for the properties where I'm close to these properties, it's just tough.
It is.
I want to open my Christmas gifts, and I want them now,
Right.
But similar to you, I do have other properties that I hunt out of state, where just by the nature of the distance, I'm forced to wait longer, which is a good thing. So like my spots down in Ohio, I'll be checking those just once a month. And I actually put a camera up down on our Ohio property like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I think maybe mid to late June, I'll be making another trip down there to check that camera. And I'm excited because there's a couple really nice deer that I think made it through. So excited about that. But
yeah.
Next, I thought, this is a perfect segue too, you mentioned you have 8 cameras. And so I'll share a little bit about how many cameras I have, but I'm curious, how are you spreading these cameras out? About how many cameras per property or per, let's say, maybe 100 acres are you putting out there?
It's funny because I have learned that on a couple of these properties, I'll give you an example. I have a river bottom ag field and along the river, the creek system down there, there's probably I'd say maybe a 30, 40, 50 yard strip of timber between the river and the ag field. And a lot of these deer like to bed there. Now, I've had trail camera and mineral stations right there and had a good amount of deer show up. Now, this past year, I put a mineral station across the big ag field, probably 250, 300 yards on the opposite end of this ag field that butts up against the main draws and all the timber. Completely different set of deer hit that one. So even though it was relatively close, they were close, geographically, the deer just traveled in different areas. So I'm getting different deer. So it all depends on the geography of the properties. I would say roughly 50 acres maybe for one mineral station and one trail camera right now. Now, when the hunting season, I know from experience that I'm going to there's going to be a spot this year, and I talked about the pinch point that I found out, where I'm going to have a trail camera on a fence crossing, and I'm going to have a trail camera down at the bottom, and they're going to be probably 75, 80 yards away from each other, covering 2 entry and exit points coming out of the same location on this pinch point. It's going to catch every deer that's going to come through.
Right.
But it's a lot for me. It's based off the geography.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's sometimes those almost like blockades that aren't like natural blockades, like a creek or a ridge or a road, that even though, you might be in a 10-acre area, one group of deer, like you said, one group of deer only works the 5 acres, and one group of deer only works the other 45 on the other side of it, and you'll never see the same deer on the other side. So yeah, there's no perfect answer, like you said. I think it also depends at the time of the year. So this time of year during the summer, I probably have less cameras out per property or per 100 acres. For instance, for example, one of the main properties in Michigan I'll have 2 cameras hanging in the summer. And then during the hunting season, I might turn it up to 3, maybe even 4, because I'm trying to better understand movement in certain areas or daytime usage. While this time of the year, I'm just trying to get pictures of a few select deer, and you're drawing them in from that larger area with your attractant. So, but like you said, it all depends. I guess I'd probably average maybe in the summer 1 per 100 acre, maybe like you said, 1 per 50 acres, I guess. But it's a fluid answer. There's no perfect answer to that.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
And then come hunting season, it all changes. Because when I had a giant, an absolute giant. I don't know if I ever showed you pictures of him, but showed up. And in this 55-acre piece that I had permission to hunt, and then I had 5 trail cameras on a 55 acres.
Wow.
And he's worth it to have that many cameras there, So I only had 3 other cameras for the rest of my properties, but this deer was worth it. So, I may have sacrificed in other areas, but I wanted to, if I had the opportunity to kill a 200-inch typical 10, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I can understand that. That kind of deer would warrant some special attention from anyone.
Right.
Oh man, I can't.
That's the one deer I'm hoping shows back up this year. But typically he shows up in the winter when I drop corn, and he didn't this year. So I'm kind of nervous.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's the best thing about this time of year though. In June and July, getting the answer to that question, hopefully, did he make it?
And I know exactly what I'm looking for. He's got 2 slices out of his left ear, and I know who he is, and I hope he shows back up, man. I'm pumped to see what kind of conspires.
I sure hope so. Hope it happens for you too. That'll be some exciting summer podcasts if our local.
We might have to have a podcast where I'm from the field checking my trail cameras
to get the live reaction.
Yeah.
Oh man, I could geek out about this all day. I've got a couple friends of mine that will just meet up and talk deer, get breakfast every once in a while, and I'll just talk like probably every time we meet up. It'll be like, oh man, what do you think Leaner's going to look like if he made it this year? And we'll just sit there and ooh and ah about it for 10 minutes. It doesn't get old. I can just dream. I can just dream about it, man. But let's jump to something we had kind of touched on a couple times already. We've half answered this question, but what exactly are we putting in front of our trail cameras? I sort of already covered for me. I'm putting out a combination of mineral and attractant. So for minerals, I've used a couple different things. I've used trophy rocks. I've used a mineral from the Whitetail Institute of North America. And I'm also looking forward to trying a couple new mineral products from Big and J this year. So those are the things when it comes to mineral I'm using. And then for just an attractant, I'm either using Big and J's long-range attractant, essentially a feed that you're pouring out there on the ground. And then I'm also usually mixing that with corn. So I'm putting out maybe 10, 20, 30 pounds, depending on where I'm at and what the legal limit is. So that's what I'm putting in front of my cameras to draw those deer in, to get the pictures during the summertime. What specifically are you using?
Well, over the past years, it's literally varied. And a lot of it has to do with price of the product.
Yeah.
Now, when I was with a hunting team, I guess you want to say, I had some stuff at dirt cheap prices, or I got it for free. So no brainer. That's what I used.
Right. But
in the past, from me purchasing it myself, Lucky Buck always comes to mind. It's a really good attractant. And I tell you, deer come to that stuff.
Right.
We have Monster Rack. I've used the past couple of years, seen good results. This year, I have a good friend who started a business, and the name of the company is called Whitetail XTC.
Okay.
And that's a fairly effective. It's middle of the range as far as price is concerned. And when I went and hung my trail cameras this weekend, it looks like they're hitting it very good. So,
nice.
I think a lot of these products do the same thing, but it's all the marketing on what you want them, what they want you to believe as far as bigger bucks, or if it's a pure attractant, if it's, we've talked about that 100 times. Now, as far as official attractants, last year and a little bit this year, I've used something from Monster Rack, and it's almost like a syrup. It's they have cherry flavors and a whole bunch of different flavors. That's just a real potent smell, and
Yep.
I guess the deer are attracted to it. Don't know how much it actually works, and if it works for longer than up until the first rain washes it all away. Who knows? But it seems to catch some attention. I don't know if I'm going to be using it that much this year, but I can see how it would catch their nose.
Yeah, that's a big thing that I look for that type of thing, is that scent. So that's a big reason why I like the Big and J product, is because it's got a strong scent. Or if I'm going to use anything else, I'm looking for something that's going to catch the deer's nose from a distance and bring them in, and then they can discover that, hey, I've got a consistent mineral source here, or a consistent source of corn, or whatever it might be.
Right.
It's nice to be able to catch them from a distance. Quick mention on the Lucky Buck thing. Lucky Buck is actually out of an area right near where I live. And one of my best buddies down here actually was on some of their packaging and some of their advertisements, because he killed a state record Michigan buck back in the day. So,
cool.
Kind of fun story about Lucky Buck. I've actually never used Lucky Buck, even though they're local. But like you said, I've heard good things. So
I just want to have a quick quick tip for, you mentioned laying corn out this time of year and throughout the summer.
Yep.
Just make sure that corn pile is getting plenty of sunlight throughout the day, because, and this is what I've learned the hard way, you dump out a corn pile in August, September, inside the timber, that humidity is going to create mold on that corn pile, and then the deer won't touch it. They'll actually stay away from it. So if you're going to do it, make sure it's on a field edge where sun can dry it out the entire time. Just kind of a quick tip, I guess.
I like that. Quick tips from Dan Johnson. That's a good one right there.
That's right. That's right.
All right. We are very quickly running out of time. It's gone a lot faster than I thought we were going to.
Hey, time flies when you're having fun, Mark.
That's the truth. How about, real quick, we touch on the types of cameras we're using. I've used a handful of different cameras over the years, but probably the last 4 years or so, I've fine-tuned my purchases down to Bushnell trophy cams. I've used probably 4 other brands, but I've had so many darn issues with different cameras where they just die on me, or something's flimsy, or something's not working. And the most consistent one I've found so far has been the Bushnells. I originally tried them because they were back 5 years ago, they were the only cameras that were really small. Now everyone's small, which is great. But for me, I just have built that trust with them over this past 4 or 5 year period. And I've just grown to feel comfortable with them. 99% of the time, I know I'm going to get pictures. I know they're going to look half decent, and I don't need to worry about them crashing on me. So I've stuck with them because of that. And they also, when it comes down to other important features, they've got one of the fastest trigger speeds out there, which is important. So you're catching deer if they're moving across the frame. And they've got all the other features that most camera manufacturers have, the fancy stuff like the plot scanner or the different types of flash modes and etc. So for me, that's what I'm using. And I have, I think, 9 cameras that I've accumulated over the years now. And I've had a handful that have died on me. And of those 9 that are still alive right now, I think 7 of them are those trophy cams. So that's mostly what I'm using. But, that's what I choose to use. That's what worked well for me and what I believe in. But, there's other options. And I'm sure you've been using some different cameras too. So what's worked for you, Dan?
Well, back in the day when I bought my first trail cameras, they were fairly cheap and they were Moultries, and they took the double D batteries.
Oh, yeah.
They were heavy. And they're about the size of a sheet of paper, it felt like. So they stuck out. They're big. They had flash. So, but they had an SD card and they seemed to work. Since then, and again, having the benefit of being on the hunting team, if you want to say that, I got some pretty good prices from Covert trail cameras. And to be honest with you, they're right in the middle of the line. They're not the cheapest and they're not the most expensive.
Yep.
And they work really good. It was just this year that I had some issues with them. The Moultries of the past, they did not work below freezing for some reason. They just would take black pictures. And so anytime it was below freezing outside, it was like 32 degrees and the camera would work, take pictures, but the pictures would show up just black. My coverts work really well, and aside from just a couple issues with them, very, very dependable. And I also have one of those trail cameras by Covert that sends the pictures to your cell phone.
Oh, yes.
And that's pretty cool. Not gonna lie.
That is very cool.
But the issue is you gotta have cell phone reception for them to work. And if I do get cell phone reception, it's very minimal where I hunt, and that can be a problem. And something to definitely take into consideration if you're going to purchase one of those cameras.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've never used one of those in the past, but Bushnell has came out with one this year, so I'm excited to try that this summer, and it's going to be really nice for me because I hunt some properties that are 5 hours away from home, so
right.
Yeah, it's just it's not realistic for me to be able to check those too often. So I'm really excited to try that out, see how that works, and like you said, there's some qualifiers, some things like you need to have cell phone service, etc. But I think overall it's a trend that we're gonna see consistently growing. More and more manufacturers are gonna put that out because it makes all the sense in the world. Why wouldn't you want that?
And it's only Moore's Law. You should know what Moore's Law is, right?
Is that the one that anything that's gonna go wrong will go wrong?
It could be. Maybe no. I'm in the wrong. But
yours, the technology cuts in half every year, right?
Yeah, every 18 months, the price of the technology increases, but the price decreases.
Yes.
So as more of these trail camera manufacturers come out with these, send a cell phone options, you're going to see the price go down and the technology is going to become cheaper.
Yeah, it's a good thing for consumers.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, and I think the one I was thinking of, the law I was thinking of was Murphy's Law.
Murphy's Law, that's
Murphy's
right.
Law. Too many dang laws to keep straight. All right, so last question then for our episode here on off-season trail camera use. And this one comes from a reader over at wiredhunt.com. This comes from Derek, and he asks, how do you organize your trail camera photos? So I'll let you take a stab at it first, Dan, and then I'll share what I do.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I just create however many properties I have. I create a file on my computer, and let's say property 1. And on property 1, then I have it broken down by year. So 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever. And then every year I create a new file. And then I have it broken down by buck, like the buck that I'm chasing. So by property, then by year, then by buck. Now, if I have a cool picture, that's just cool, or neat to look at, not necessarily helping me with any type of putting together a hit list, I'll save that in a different spot. But yeah, property by property, then by year, then by deer. So every one of those is a new folder.
Nice. Okay, that's pretty close to what I do as well. I've got a folder system as well on my computer. I do by property and then by year, and then I break it down a little bit differently here. I've got a different folder for each different trail camera location.
Okay.
And then within that, I'll dump each new pull. So it'll be back scrape August, back scrape October 1st, back scrape October 29th or whatever. And I'll just dump those in there. But I don't really reference those too often because that's, it'll be 1,000 pictures in a folder. That's kind of as just a backup just in case I want to reference these files again. What I really am looking at the most is I have a buck folder. So it'll be, property number 1, 2013, and then I'll put my 2013 bucks folder. And then within that, I will save every picture of a 2.5-year-old buck or bigger or older, because even though I'm not targeting 2.5-year-old bucks, they're definitely recognizable at that point. And so that the following year when they come back, hopefully as a 3.5-year-old, I'll be able to say, oh yeah, this one's a shooter now, or is a 4.5-year-old. Yep, he's a shooter, and I can go back and look at his pictures back when he was a 2.5-year-old and probably be able to identify those. So the deepest I've gone is by the shooter bucks or 2.5-year-old bucks or older, and I'm starting to have bucks that I've followed for several years. So I'm going to start breaking that buck folder down into folders for those different shooter bucks too, so that I'll have 4 or 5 folders hopefully for mature deer that I've followed for a couple of years and keep breaking it down. But that's the plan for this year. And there's also a couple neat websites that have come out in the past year or so, or will be coming out soon with features that help you organize trail camera photos. I know a site that's going to be relaunching here soon. Huntsoft.com is going to have some features like that, I believe, soon, as well as Hunt Force and Deer Lab. All these different 3 services offer different ways for you to upload your pictures and analyze them in different ways. So we'll probably be talking about some of those in more detail in the future because I think it's pretty neat. Different ways that you can organize your photos online, sort through them, filter them, and learn some different things based on looking at your photos at an aggregate level. So something to think about.
Cool beans, man.
Well, what do you think? Anything else that you want to touch on?
Well, just real quickly, when it comes to trail cameras, now I wrote a blog earlier this week or last week actually about some tips and tricks about trail cameras on the ninefingerchronicles.com. But I'll just want to cover one of those real quick.
Sure.
And that is to be anal retentive about your trail cameras. And that just means make sure you have enough battery life. Make sure your trail camera is actually taking pictures and transferring them to the SD card. Make sure that they are in the right location. I mean, just be anal retentive, because nothing is worse than going in and finding out that your computer or your trail camera did not take pictures. That pisses me off, especially when it's my fault.
Yeah.
And so just be anal, and even if you're checking it 3-4 times, you got to do it because it's worth it.
Awesome tip. So true, so valuable, and got to pay attention to the details. That's something that I'm always hammering and talking about, is the paying attention to the small things.
Right.
And that's a perfect example of it. So excellent way to wrap this episode up. Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
So with that said, I'm going to take one quick step back here now. I actually had a listener of the podcast send me a message on Facebook that said that, and this is only for people of age, but he said that he's started a drinking game every time that I say, that being said, because I guess I say that a lot. So he's taking a drink every time I say that. So I just gave him another sip right there. But
maybe I will, when you say that, maybe the next podcast, I'll take a shot. And we'll see how I'm speeching. I can't even talk now. How I talk by the end of that podcast.
Well, this is a family podcast, so I don't know.
Maybe I'll just do it with grape juice.
There you go. No, I think that's pretty funny. And I've caught myself saying it a handful of times now already today after he mentioned that, and guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. So, all right.
So with that being said,
I don't know how to transition any other way but that. Okay, I'm going to try this though. Thank you so much to everyone out there listening today. Of course, we're thrilled that you joined us and for dealing with me saying things like that being said and all that. So big props for sticking with us for almost an hour here. I know that might not be easy sometimes, but if you have enjoyed the show, we would really, really, really appreciate it if you could leave a rating or review on iTunes. This, of course, helps us get the word out about what we're doing, but it also helps other hunters find the show. And hopefully, that can help give them an opportunity to learn a thing or two more about becoming a better deer hunter. Hopefully we're helping you a little bit, and I'd love to be able to help more people as they grow as deer hunters. And we've actually had 21 incredible folks leave us a rating already. And man, we really, really appreciate that. And I thought I'd share one of those reviews here today. And this comes from quote-unquote Big Country. And I don't know if this is a he or she, but Big Country's review is titled Awesome Hunting Podcast, ! And he or she says, packed with tons of great info, will definitely change the way I hunt in years to come based on all the great tips and strategies provided. It's also a lot of fun to listen to and hear all the stories from different personalities. Keep it coming. So huge thanks to you, Big Country. We will definitely keep it coming. And, we really appreciate you saying that. And to everyone else out there who's left a review, big thanks. If you'd like to leave a review of your own, which maybe we'll someday read on the air too, you can head to iTunes right now and search for the Wired to Hunt podcast. Click on our little Wired to Hunt podcast image and then select the ratings or review tab. And there you'll see a little button that says write a review. And from there you can go ahead and write whatever you want about us or the podcast. Maybe something about how you don't like the fact that Dan only has 9 fingers, or or maybe about how you don't like the fact that I say that being said all the time. Whatever it is you'd like to say, we appreciate it. And speaking of thanks, we'd also like to thank our partners who help make this show possible. Huge, huge help. We wouldn't be able to keep the website running or this podcast on the air if it weren't for great hunting brands out there that believe in what we're doing and are supporting us. So big thanks to Sitka Gear, Bushnell Optics, Trophy Ridge, Bear Archery, Redneck Blinds, Carbon Express Arrows, Lacrosse Boots, Big & J Long Range Attractants, and the Whitetail Institute of North America. That being said, be sure to visit wiredhunt.com/episode 10, and that's the number 10, and that's where you'll be able to find our show notes from today's episode. I'll include all the links for different things we mentioned today, as well as a handful of other articles or links to articles that we've written on Wired to Hunt about trail cameras, and we'll also link to that article that Dan mentioned on his blog, The 9 Finger Chronicles. And if you're new, please head over to wiredtohunt.com to sign up for our Whitetail Fix newsletter. That's where you'll get different updates and news on what's going on in the blog, exciting things coming up, and we'll keep stuff interesting if you sign up there. So thanks again, Wired to Hunt Nation. Until next time, have a great week. Get out in the woods and do the work. Never say never, and always, always stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.